Hello, I'm back. Um, Reporting here from my recliner, which I highly recommend if you don't have a recliner, get a recliner. You'll need the recliner, um, especially after you start having surgeries if you're in need of surgeries. I'm a side sleeper, a little bit back, but mostly a side sleeper, and the recliner kind of keeps me on my back instead of rolling onto my side because a couple weeks ago I had a double mastectomy. So I'm not supposed to and shouldn't. And it's really kind of painful to sleep on my side right now. My husband was a godsend in getting a lift chair. So that has helped me get to a more standing position before I am able to get out of the chair. Uh, I recently met with the radiology oncologist and my oncologist, um, and uh, heard from by phone from my surgeon. So as far as surgery goes, I have now graduated to seeing her every 6 months, and that'll go on for 3 years. And then I'll see her once a year till I hit the 5 year mark. And then I will graduate out of being a surgical patient. So, in addition to being a cancer patient for the rest of my life, I am currently a surgical patient. So, I look forward to that graduation day. Not as much as when I got both my master's degrees, but it's right up there. After this long journey, currently I have refused radiation therapy based off of research I've done into more specific cases like mine. Um, and in the future, I'll go into why I refused radiation therapy. My oncologist has recommended not resuming immunotherapy because I had a really bad reaction to it involving my lungs. That is an ongoing issue. And if I have another reaction, it could actually kill me. So he recommended I not continue immunotherapy because the risks were higher than the benefits. I concurred, and we mutually agreed that we would not go down that road. It's an option that's available in the future, but right now I'm better not. And the fact that the cancer is gone, if I haven't already mentioned that, uh, is one of the biggest reasons why I'm not having immunotherapy, which would have been another 27 weeks of IVs or radiation therapy, which could result in lifelong permanent issues. Um, so that's my current situation. Going back to the beginning when I met my oncologist, um, as I mentioned in a previous video, the first person I met was the nurse navigator and the surgeon. The surgeon had a sheet of paper, two-sided, where it showed the little cartoon boobies, and she marked where all of my yucky stuff was on the cartoon boobies. And then there's a scale of staging, and she scribbled out, the early stages, and she says, "You're over here in stage 3." And then, in addition to that, you're a B because it metastasized to 2 lymph nodes. And then she went over the possible plan. Um, Not too long after, maybe days, it could have been a week, I met my oncologist, and I gotta get this out. The oncologist, first I met the nurse navigator by phone. She is the lady that was gonna manage appointments, help me get to where I need to be. And she also had experience with dealing with the VA and getting approvals and making sure that I had everything that I needed, because my primary health care is the Veterans Administration. Every single doctor I need to see, I need approval for. So instead of me going to my GP in the VA to get referrals, she was the one, the nurse navigator, who worked with VA community care and said, okay, this is what the doctor said. We need a referral for this type of expert. Yada, yada, yada. It goes on from there. So while I was having my whirlwind of doctors, she was having her whirlwind of the VA. And in this particular instance, the VA was amazing. I couldn't believe how fast paperwork was flying through. Um, a person, Patty from the VA Community Care Department, called me personally. She said that she was assigned to my case. She would be following with phone calls to see how I was doing, to make sure I was getting the referrals I needed, that I had the care that I was comfortable with. If I needed to change doctors, anything like that, I could call her directly. And if she wasn't available, Alex in that office could help with my case. So it was nice to know that I had an actual human being, because the automated VA telephone system, it can be a nightmare. And when they update it and they change which number you're supposed to press for this, that, or any other thing, after a while it just gets more confusing and more confusing. And community care is not on that menu. So the fact that they called me was incredible. I was actually shocked that that was a service provided. Um, so I had somebody at the VA, I had somebody at the hospital, the nurse navigator, um, and then she warned me um, that the oncologists in the hospital where I was getting treatment were very busy, and I would be seeing an oncologist who had experience with breast cancer patients, but mostly dealt with general oncology. Um, and he was newer, I think, newer to the hospital. But she mentioned that he was very soft spoken. I don't know what that means, to be honest. I'm not soft spoken. As far as speaking goes, I'm proficient in 3 languages: sarcasm, sailor, and English. And not always in that order. So I kind of have, I'm not an outgoing person, but I have an outgoing personality. So I don't understand what soft spoken means. Is this guy shy? Is this guy reserved? Is this guy, I don't know what that means. So I just said, screw it. I'm just going to be me, and whatever happens, happens. The first appointment, or before the first appointment, this is a handy tip I got from my mother. Since she's a cancer survivor. Um, she gave me a gift before my appointment with the surgeon, and it was a tote bag. My favorite color is purple. Close second is blue, but I have a lot of purple. I'm not a huge fan of pink, and unfortunately, most cancer stuff is pink. But now they're kind of, for breast cancer, anyways, it's pink. Now the breast cancer's kind of it grudgingly adding purple. So my mom got me a purple tote bag, and inside the tote bag was a binder and a notebook and some pens. At the very there was some other stuff in there. She got me a stuffed sloth. I believe that the sloth is my spirit animal because we're both slow moving and we love naps. Um, so she had gotten me a stuffed sloth to prepare for my first session of chemo. Um, but having the notebook is the essential part. Every time you go to an appointment, if you're able to have somebody come with you, like I did, my mother was able to come with me. My husband works. Um, she took notes at every appointment. And because chemo brain is a thing where you forget things and it's a little foggy sometimes and you lose your words, I'll probably pull that notebook out at some point and refer back to it. But these first couple of appointments were quite memorable. Um, so in this exam room, is myself, my mom, and the nurse navigator. And the oncology nurse comes in, takes your vital statistics, went through all of my medications. Many years ago, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune disease. And like potato chips, you can't just have one. So I had several autoimmune issues, and on top of some vaccine injury issues I was dealing with. So I have a very lengthy list of diagnoses and a lengthy list of medications. And the nurse goes through the medications every single appointment. Um, so after a while, it's just either you write it down, you remember it, or whatever. You punt and try and get through this list, and they want to be sure that they know what drugs you're on, what doses you're on, so that there's no interaction with the chemo drugs. After she leaves, the oncologist comes in, and he was a very nice man. Um, I thought maybe his description as soft spoken was because he was an Asian man. I know that sounds kind of weird, but I know a little bit about the culture, and here's a man who's going to be touching a woman that's not his wife. I thought maybe that might be some of the issue there. But like I said, I'm just going to be me. He greeted us, he was very nice. He asked to do an exam, and there was a gown available to me. I went in wearing a fuck cancer tank top because that's how I felt about it. Still, that's how I feel about it. And a sports bra because I knew they'd have to do a breast exam, and I wanted to make things as simple as possible. So I sat on the exam table. I turned down the gown. I didn't really need it, and just pulled my boob out over my shirt. Now, not to sound flirty or anything, but I had size D breasts. So you just flip the whole thing out, and there it all is. I mean, how much else do you need? Um, Saved on the gown. They didn't have to worry about laundering it. But he was aghast. Um, he was in the process of washing his hands and putting on gloves, and all I did was flip my boob out, and he's just beside himself. I don't think he's ever had that experience before, and I guess it was a little shocking. I thought it was funny as shit. He had pulled the curtain, so even my mom and the nurse navigator couldn't see really what was happening, but I kind of tried not to laugh at his reaction because he was being very professional and respectful to me, and I was trying to make it easier for him to deal with my situation. So he did the physical exam, and he's saying out loud what's going on because he had a transcriptionist with him. She was on the other side of the curtain typing away his notes as he was saying them. And he had a measuring tape and he measured the largest mass, which was on the right side at the 12 o'clock position, half under the areola. And he thought that he could feel more behind it. Um, and but it was not something that you could really measure, and the lymph nodes involved were enlarged. So that was the sum total of the exam. And then he says, so he didn't, he had no idea how to tell me that he was done and I could put my boob back. So we kind of, a little bit of sign language, a couple of words, and I figured it out and flipped the boob back into my shirt and pulled the curtain back. And I sat in a chair next to him and his computer. And then he started explaining to me um, all the things that the surgeon had explained, and then started going into what the treatment plan would be. I would not have surgery first. Many cancer patients have surgery first to remove the cancer, and then they have chemo and then radiation. In my case, they, as strange as it just seems strange to say it, but as strange as it was, they wanted to keep the cancer in place so that they could monitor how well the chemo was working. If the chemo was working, I would be receiving 4 drugs, and he explained the 4 drugs. And when I say I'm receiving 4 drugs at basically at the same time, um, and through IV infusion, I would have um, my treatment would be divided into sections. So leaving the cancer in place, I would start chemo immediately. I would have 12 weeks of chemo, every once a week for 12 weeks. Now, when they talk to you about cancer, they refer to it in cycles. Each cycle is 3 weeks. So I would start with 4 cycles once a week for total of, it would be 12 infusions over 12 weeks. And then part of that is the first week I would get, after chemo, I would have 3 consecutive days where I would have immune therapy shots included. So I would go in for chemo, and then once a day for the next 3 days, I got a shot for immune therapy. And then the next week, I'm probably going to screw this up and should be checking my notes, but I would have 3 days where I was taking steroids and then just the chemo. So that's how that worked. So 1 week was chemo with 3 shots, 1 week was chemo with 3 days of steroids, and 1 week was just the chemo. I don't remember the order. I'll have to check my notes. But it all makes you feel like crap. It doesn't matter. I was able to control nausea with compazine. So I didn't I had nausea. I didn't have any vomiting. Thank goodness, because I hate throwing up. Um, and I would go through this for 12 weeks. He also explained that pretty much that part of the plan was set, provided nothing weird happened. After that was tentative. So after the 12 weeks, I would have another, um, what was it, 4 cycles of once a week chemo, but not the shots. It would they were basically it would change drugs. So the first 4 weeks was this combination of poisons being pumped into me, and then the second half of the chemo treatment, it was 2 drugs, one of which is nicknamed the Red Devil. I'll explain that one later. That one's not fun either. And then depending on how the cancer reacts, um, after all of that chemo, then I would have surgery. And after the surgery was radiation, and after the radiation was possible reconstruction or whatever surgery I decided. Because the cancer was only in one breast, I had the option of a single mastectomy. But I had already started doing research. I'm a researcher. I study everything. I look everything up. And triple negative breast cancer is fast spreading. It's can come on by surprise like mine did. It's aggressive. It's hard to treat, and that those factors have to be in the forefront while watching how things go with the treatment. I also had to have a breast biopsy with an MRI, which is no fun because you're actually, for that, you're laying on your stomach with your boobs hanging down like you're in a milking stall. I live in Wisconsin. It's Dairyland. So you feel like, when are they going to put the milkers on and get going? But they basically stick a needle through your boob to get a sample of the cancer. And they did that in 2 places to get the cancer in the breast and the cancer in the lymph nodes. It's not a horrible experience, but it's not a pleasant experience either. And that's just to give my team more information on my cancer, and to confirm the triple negative, to confirm the stages and those types of things, that it was only one type of cancer in my breast. I asked questions like, is it going to spread to the other side? And the answer to that is no. Actually, the cancer will spread, triple negative will spread to the lymph nodes, and then whatever is connected to the lymph nodes, which is your entire body, it could go to the lungs, it could go to the brain. So we really don't want the lymph nodes involved, and we don't want it to spread to more lymph nodes. I already had 2. So, but what she did, or I can't remember if it was the surgeon or the oncologist. What happens is if breast cancer comes up in the other breast, it's typically a different type of breast cancer. But the risks are high. So I had a choice between a single mastectomy or double mastectomy. I didn't have to make that decision. in the beginning because there's a lot of variables in play, on top of the fact that there are variables that come into play. So I was basically getting ready to start chemo, and I was going to have chemo once a week for 12 weeks. And that is 4 cycles, um, 12 infusions, plus the 3 days of shots after chemo, and the 3 days of steroids. Uh, Yeah, I kind of joke around about things, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, cancer, people I know that have cancer have lost a lot of weight. This could be a pretty good diet plan for a while. Yeah, not so much for me. I pretty much gained and lost the same 5 pounds through all of chemo, maybe because I wasn't throwing up. That would have been an option, but not one I wanted. So I didn't get skinny. I didn't lose weight. I'm a curvy girl. I maintained around 200 pounds all the way through chemo. I think if I had had more issues with nausea and vomiting, I probably would have lost weight. My mother, when she went through cancer, actually ended up in the hospital for malnutrition, because of her reactions to chemo. Um, I w- didn't have much of an appetite. I had a hard time eating food. Um, I am still basically I can eat. If you go to a restaurant, we'll put it give you an example. If you go to a restaurant, you get those restaurant portions. If I could eat half of that, it was a good day. Most of the time, I could eat 1/3 of a restaurant portion, and then I'd take the rest home, and I'd have 1 or 2 meals that I could easily heat up myself. But that's all I ate the whole day. Um, Part of it was going back to the autoimmune issues. I have gastroparesis. So, going into this experience, I had a partially paralyzed digestive system. So, it takes a long time for food to digest. Well, the fact that I really didn't want any food because of the chemo made that situation a little nerve wracking for the dietitians and nutritionists that I had to work with, because they wanted me to make sure I get enough calories, but at the same time, I didn't want to eat. Um, Nothing appealed to me, nothing tasted right. So I would eat 1 meal a day and maybe a few bites of a snack once or twice in addition to that. Um, my oncologist he did blood work before I met with him. I had to go to the lab. Um, and have blood work done, and he would be watching my white blood cell count, red cell count, thyroid, kidneys, liver. I mean, the every lab you can think of for every organ in your body. I also would be receiving regular EKGs. I would get a CAT scan every 3 months. There were additional MRIs that I had to go through. And this was all thrown at me on the first appointment with the oncologist. So I haven't even started chemo yet. But this is where the plan was going. And then there was a very vague reference to the second half of chemo where they would be switching over the drugs and changing the immunotherapy and preparing for surgery and radiation and yada, yada, yada. So the first thing to focus on was that first half of the plan, which was getting chemo started. Um, so after completely discombobulating my oncologist with my boob flip, um, he very professionally explained the first part of the cancer plan. My mom took notes on what was going on. Um, and at this point, my brain is just, I'm still trying to process the fact that I have cancer. And then I had to process the fact that I had advanced cancer. And now I'm processing what kind of cancer it is, um, and all the things that I have to go through to deal with this. And the first part was having a port put in. So I have this happy little scar with this little lumpy thing, and this is my chemo port. And every time I went in for chemotherapy, they would stick the needle in here for an IV so they wouldn't blow out the IV in my arms with the frequency that they would need to stab me. So there's a plastic doohickey thing in, which ironically is purple. I thought that was cool. And it has a tube that goes up the jugular vein and a tube that goes down. I don't know what vein that's called, but it goes to the rest of your system. And on chemo days, you put lidocaine on it so it's numb. They stab you with this needle that has the IV hose connected to it, and it makes it a lot easier to receive your infusions. Um, I think this video is probably long enough. So that was kind of the next step in my cancer journey. My next video, I will talk about when I told people. At this point, the only people that knew were my mom, myself, and my husband. I haven't told my children yet. That time, I hadn't told them yet because I didn't have enough information. Um, it would be like the first call I got that just said, you have cancer. Well, that was for my sake so that I wouldn't be waiting and going crazy. And I didn't want to put my kids through that. I have 4 adult children, and 2 are on the autism spectrum. So I wanted to wait till I had more detail. So I will do a video on telling the rest of my family and friends and how that went. And we'll get a little bit into chemo. Chemo was a lot of fun. Not really. Um, but this was the next step on my journey. Um, I guess the most fun part was freaking out my oncologist. But, I did, because he's soft spoken and he was a very nice man. I did set a goal that at some point, because he never smiled once, um, at some point, I set the goal that I was going to make that man laugh out loud. If he's soft spoken, I'm going to do everything I can to break him of that without crossing any lines, being cognizant of any cultural or personal um, issues that he had. And I was going to be respectful of all that, but I was going to make that man laugh out loud just because nobody thought it would happen. And I like a challenge. Go big or go home. Stage 3 cancer. Go big or go home. Well, I went big and then I went home. So, but at this point, I'm, just, I haven't even gotten my port put in yet. And I have chemo to look forward to. Uh, but that was in July of last year. And I started chemo in August, the beginning of August. And a few weeks ago, I finally finished chemo. So we're talking about 9 or 10 months because I did have some complications. But I'll talk. I will also talk about ways to have a little fun with it, because I would rather laugh than cry, and I did a lot of both through this journey, and I made a lot of people laugh, and a few people cry, not intentionally, but the tears did come, but so did the laughs. So that was the next step on my journey.